Alright, so I wanted to make a video because I know some of you guys have been asking me over the past couple seasons, if new meta changes come out, are you going to make a video and explain, the changes because things are changing a lot. And with this Season of the Witch came out yesterday. Or was it yesterday or today? Was it today? I think it was yesterday. But a lot changed, okay? A lot changed. This is like... I didn't expect this level of change to come through until like a major DLC. This is more than a major DLC. Okay, we have a lot of stuff to talk about. So let me get my stuff to talk about here. So first, you guys are going crazy. Okay, first, there's a lot of new weapons. There's like 36 new weapons. Most of these are not really relevant for endgame PvE. I'm only going to talk about stuff that's really relevant for endgame PvE. None of the new exotics are really that relevant. I mean, Dead Messenger got demo, but that's kind of whatever. I'm going to skip over all the primaries because I don't think they're really worth talking about for the most part. I would say Warden's Law. Warden's Law gets 4 times a charm and Vorpal. So that might be worth using if it's like a high DPS archetype for like Lucky Pants. But we're not going to know till it comes out. So going to wait. Nox Perennial. This is, I guess, a substitute. This is like a high impact. It has Envious and it has Controlled Burst. So it's a substitute for like our Vandal if you were using that. But for the most part, usually people when they use fusion rifles for DPS, they are in the energy slot. But it's an interesting option nonetheless. What else we got here? This is basically another special weapon, right? This is basically Thoughtless. I mean, it has Overflow Firing Line, I think. Yeah, it has Overflow Firing Line. It's basically Thoughtless. None of the other perks are, anything special. So it's basically Thoughtless again. What else we got? Oh yeah, this bow. This bow. I said I wouldn't talk about primaries, but this bow's nice. It's basically like an adept higher stat version of the solar bow from Strikes. I forgot what Strident Whistle. Yeah, that one. So yeah, it's basically a better version of that. So I guess I'll farm that. The Eremites. This is the best fusion rifle in the game for DPS now. Besides Midas, but that's what's surrounded. It's probably not gonna proc that. Has enhanced Envious, enhanced Controlled. It has Reservoir Burst, but no auto. It's the only bad thing about it. No auto. Okay, what else is there? I think that's basically it. I don't think anything else was too special. The snipers here, not too crazy. And the last thing, I think everything else is pretty much irrelevant for the most part. Actually, yeah, the last thing is Cataphract. Okay, or was this the machine gun that had Cascade? No, this machine gun doesn't have Cascade. Okay, I'm not gonna leak that because that's in the API in case some of you care about spoilers. But Cataphract, this is a Trials Heavy GL. It is very good. It's an adaptive, has 6 in the mag, so it's better than Regnant, and it has both Envious and Auto and Cascade Point and bait and switch. Okay, so the big problem with GLs was Explosive Light only lasts 7 shots with enhanced and 6 with no enhanced, so you would run out of you'd have no damage perk for most of your reserves unless you were constantly picking up orbs. But bait and switch, it's a perk that can last the entirety of this GL's reserves. So we're going to talk about that and the ramifications, and maybe talk about a damage rotation that you could do using bait and switch. Okay, so that's new weapons. Nothing too crazy. I guess look forward to grinding the Trials GL. It's not super important, but it's probably the best weapon out of PvE for all of the weapons that we've been shown so far this season. Okay, next let's talk about Pyrogale. So Pyrogale Gauntlets, I'm sure probably plenty of you have heard about this already, but they are a Solar Titan Gauntlet, exotic gauntlets. And they're basically, they turn your Burning Maul into a single big slam that leaves behind cyclones that do like scorch damage and ignite the boss. So Pyrogale is pretty good. I tested it on 3 bosses. I tested it on Riven, Templar, and Phrygia, the Grasp Ogre. And a word of caution about Pyrogale, okay? So Pyrogale is situational. It's situational. It's not like T-Crash where you can T-Crash pretty much any boss. Pyrogale is situational. The thing about Pyrogale is on a boss like Templar, it performed really poorly. It did worse than T-Crash by a fair amount. On a boss like Riven, depending on where we hit her, it did around the same as T-Crash with the Synthesept swap, which I'll explain in a second. And then on Phrygia, which is a boss that's, kind of a big hitbox and has plenty of room and not like a weird hitbox, but a big hitbox, right? On a boss like that, Pyrogale did very well. So with that out of the way, if we go look at our Pyrogale results, Burning Maul, you'll see that we did around 830k with a Syntheseps swap. So if you don't know Syntheseps, they're an exotic. I'm sure you know about Syntheseps, but they also have something that people don't really talk about. If you're near enemies, you get a 50% boost to super damage, right? And the thing about Pyrogale, it's kind of like Celestial Nighthawk, where you can pop it and the effect is there, and then you could switch your exotic and you'll still get the single slam effect, right? So you pop on Pyrogale after getting Roaring Flame stacks, you switch to Syntheseps to get, biotic enhancements, and then you slam. And with a boss that you can actually hit this on and you can pre-pop it on, it does 830k damage, which is very good. That's very good, right? That's like the highest burst damage super in the game. With Golden Gun, Celestial Nighthawk being like 380k, Blade Barrage being like 550k around there, and then of course Thunder Crash being like, where is it? Thunder Crash, Curious, 460k, right? So obviously having a super that does 830k is pretty good. That being said, it does take a while to cast, so the slam animation is a bit long. It locks you up from doing things for a little while. So in terms of DPS, it's actually not the highest DPS super in the game. That honor goes to Blade Barrage. So if we go over here to the swap tab, right? Blade Barrage has a swap DPS, as in, you can start shooting after the period where you can start shooting, sorry. It does like 390k DPS, right? And if you go to Pyrogale is down here. It does like 292k, right? So they're pretty similar. But if you're talking raw DPS, as in like after I'm done my super, when can I start shooting again type of DPS, then Blade Barrage is a bit higher. That being said, you can on day one where total damage is going to be a concern, and it will be a concern going forward, which I'm going to discuss. Pyrogale is a pretty good idea. And it's tied to a pretty good subclass. Makes sunspots everywhere, very good survivability, better than Arc, certainly for like something like a day one. So Pyrogale is certainly something you should consider, especially if you are maybe considering not playing Titan, given how good Hunter and Warlock are for damage and how all of them have good survivability. Okay, so that's Pyrogale. I talked about the Syntheseps swap, pretty straightforward. Threadlings got a 25% buff. This actually turned out to be rather insignificant, because if we go to let's go to values. The values tab in my spreadsheet. Let's go to Threadling Grenade. If you go to Threadling Grenade right now, this is after the buff. After the buff, one Threadling Grenade does around 37,000 damage. That's with the 25% buff. So 25% sounds like a lot. But then if you go to like Fusion Grenade, right? If we scroll up, go to Fusion Grenade. Fusion Grenades do like 77k damage. Okay? So they do around twice the damage. And yeah, basically 25% on top of a grenade that's already garbage is, it's not going to do much, right? Even with Verities, stuff like that, it's like not enough to be a viable damage strategy. And of course, the Thread of Generation nerf means that Threadling Grenades are all but dead for swapping purposes. So I kind of removed them from my spreadsheet as well. I got rid of Threadling Grenade from all the rotations. I replaced them with Grapples because you're just not going to really use Threadling Grenade for damage. That being said, something changed between last season and this season, because last season when I tested Needlestorm, we were getting like 360k, and this season we are getting around 404k or 406k, around there. So it's a bit of a buff. That's kind of nice. I'm not sure what changed here, because the numbers on my screen were the exact same, but the numbers in the wipe screen and the numbers on the health bar were different. So something changed, either that or I messed up my testing for Needlestorm like 20 times last season because I tested it a lot. So I'm a bit confused, but I'll take it. Needlestorm buff is nice. 406k. And that's pretty much it. So the Thread of Generation nerf, like we predicted, is basically just going to force people to use Grapple and not use Threadling Grenade, because you get your grenade back slower, and Threadling Grenade. And if anything, Threadling Grenade needs a cooldown reduction, honestly. It doesn't need to be that long at all. Okay, next up we have sword changes. So if you guys didn't know, swords got changed over this past patch in a pretty significant way. So the way swords work now is that after you do your heavy attack, your sword energy doesn't instantly start charging. There is a period of time where you gain no charge whatsoever. And if you try to do a heavy attack during this period, it will be like an unpowered heavy attack, right? Like before. However, after that period is over, that short period is over, your sword energy will start charging very quickly. And even before you have full sword energy, you could do a full powered heavy attack while it's charging. Okay? So what did that change? All that changed really, it means that for sword combos, Lucent Blades now matters. That's number one. And number two, you can do way less light attacks before you can do a heavy attack without losing any damage. Now you might think, okay, Well, let me give you a sneak peek, right? So before, with 3 loosened blades, for example, with Bequest and Swordmaster's Guard, you would be doing 6 light, 1 heavy to do 1 heavy as often as you can while you're waiting for the charge up, right? Now you can do 2 light, 1 heavy and not lose any damage. So you might think, okay, 2 light, 1 heavy, that's way more heavy attacks across your entire reserves. Surely that is a very big DPS increase. In reality, not the case. If we go to the single tab here, we scroll down, we go to Bequest, right? Bequest, 1 heavy 6 light combo, that's pre this season, 128,000 DPS. 1 heavy 2 light combo, that's this season, 129,000 DPS. So, you know, it was a buff, but it's not a lot. Same thing with Throne Cleaver. Throne Cleaver got affected a lot more, right? That's like plus 11k DPS, but still not enough to like turn swords into some crazy meta shit. Another question that I was getting is, you know, because swords, that period of time where you're waiting for your heavy attack to start charging again, can pass by while you're on another weapon. Like you can swap off the sword and come back and instantly heavy attack. Maybe you could swap. You could do like sword swaps, right? Sword weapon swaps. However, swords are very sluggish compared to other weapons when it comes to actually like attacking after you swap to them. So if we go to the swap tab here, right, I actually made a switch to sword and heavy attack and I timed it and I saw how much DPS it does. And it's not that good. It's like 119k, which is worse than a lot of stuff. It's not great. Yeah, there's a lot of other heavy options. Even post-nerf rockets, which we'll talk about, all of them are above like right-clicking with the Throne Cleaver. So not great. Swords they got a little buff, I guess, technically, but, you know, not anything that makes them meta. And for those of you that are asking about Lament was unchanged because obviously it doesn't really make sense to have a sword designed to do powered light attacks instantly after doing heavy. Have its sword energy delayed when it's charging because Lament, you know, it's all about doing powered light attacks before you do a heavy. So there's no like waiting period for Lament. It doesn't work that way. Okay, so that's swords. Swords is pretty straightforward. Let's talk about rockets. Okay, so this is a big one. You probably heard about this by now, but rockets had a very big change. Okay, had a very, very big change. Okay, so for that, let's go to the Wolf Packs tab. Okay, so remember how I said in my Pack Hunter video like last week or something like that, or a couple days ago, I said that Pack Hunter boosts allied rockets that are legendary rockets by 81% if there are 5 people in the fire team shooting a boss. Well, Bungie, and we have a theory here, but Bungie changed something in this patch so that there is no chunking at all. There is no chunking from Pack Hunter whatsoever. Now, if you have 5 people shooting legendary rockets next to a galley, all of you will do about 1.27 times more damage compared to if you had no galley at all, which is effectively a really big nerf. It's a really, really big nerf. Like you do 70% approximately of the damage that you used to do per rocket, which is like very, very significant. I really didn't see this coming, to be honest. I don't know if they did because of my video, or I don't know if they've been planning this for a while, but I didn't think this would happen very soon. I didn't even think this was something they could patch, to be honest. I thought it was an engine thing, but apparently they figured it out. And so the theory right now in the damage testing server, in the DMB server, is that before, wolf packs were hitting the target multiple times. They were not detonating instantly. They were basically exploding a bunch on a target repeatedly. And the more people you have, the more overloaded this effect became. But now, for whatever reason, Bungie has figured out a way so that the second wolf packs go near an enemy, they detonate instantly, so that they have no chance of hitting the target multiple times. That's the running theory right now. There's some people who have screenshots and video evidence that this is the case. We don't know this for a fact. However, you know, this is a really big change. This is a really, really big change. And I'm going to talk about the consequences in a second here. But just know that Pack Hunter has been nerfed into the ground. Well, not nerfed, but let's say fixed. I mean, I did kind of say that it probably should be fixed and should do a consistent value. And I did get what I wanted, I suppose. So, you know, like I said over here, you know, this is a big problem, big problem. Okay, so that's wolf packs. I've restructured the ranking tab and redone I spent pretty much 10 hours straight redoing all of the rocket DPS stuff. Let me actually clear this condition real quick so that you can see the new ranking. This is the new ranking. It's been sorted and rockets have fallen down pretty heavily. I mean, they still dominate the top half of the ranking, but they've definitely taken a back seat. And I'll talk about kind of where you should use rockets and why they're probably not the best option all the time anymore. It's not like a brain dead choice anymore. And finally, let's talk about bipod. So if we're on the subject of rockets, let's talk about bipod. Bipod with the new testing does 0.744% of a normal pack rocket, so it scales as expected. And if we go ahead and look at our single tab here, and we go to Clown Cartridge rockets, and we take a look at bipod, they're pretty much neck and neck, right? So you have aggressive rockets. This is with Ballador's Wrathweaver's buff, and this is no Ballador's Wrathweaver's. I would say right now, bipod in the situation that it's in is basically field prep Clown Cartridge levels of DPS, so it's kind of outclassing Hothead, except for it just has more total. It has more total damage. So in my opinion, at least, field prep Clown Cartridge Hothead is pretty much irrelevant now. I think Hothead, the only reason why you would even use Hothead after, you know, the changes in new Apex and all that stuff last season is because of field prep Clown Cartridge, and now that's kind of useless now because bipod just does that job but better if you just want to spam rockets and no swapping. And it's basically just there for like Arc Surge GMs now. That's basically all Hothead is good for now. So that's what the bipod change did. The bipod change did not dethrone bait and switch. But yeah, that's pretty much it for bipod. That's the conclusion there. What else do we got? So that's rocket changes. Boss changes. Okay, so Riven. Riven, for whatever reason, the inside of her body, I think, doesn't have like folds the way it used to, or like the majority of her body is not a valid hitbox for multiple damage instances for some reason. So Sunbracers doesn't work on her anymore, and neither does Dimensional Hypotrichoid, so the heavy wave frame. I'm not sure why, but yeah, it doesn't work anymore. So Riven, if you want to do DPS to Riven, you're probably using either rockets on her leg, or you're using Lament, or you're using Bequest and supers. That's probably what you're using on Riven now. So that's what happened there. Okay. Some other small changes. Golden Gun no longer chunks. So if you didn't know this before, in my spreadsheet, Celestial Nighthawk, if you use Celestial Nighthawk on a boss, it would do 10% more damage to the boss compared to wipe screen numbers, so to the health bar, than normal, right? Now it no longer does that. It has no bonus damage, and it doesn't interact with Kinetic Surge anymore. So Golden Gun has now fallen. I don't know why they did. I kind of liked it interacting with Kinetic Surge. I thought that was kind of a cool quirk, even though that's, I guess, technically not supposed to be that way. But, you know, I thought it was kind of nice. But now Golden Gun, as you've probably seen that I compared to it before, 380k, pretty big fall there, and then 472k for Star Eater scales. And that's with Kinetic Surge. I tested with Kinetic Surge, no difference now. So, not great. And I'm, you know, if you guys didn't know, you know, there's a Golden Gun chunking glitch on bosses where it'll randomly do like double damage. I think that's probably been patched too, if I had to guess, but I'm not sure. A lot of things have been changed in the background, and Bungie hasn't really told us everything that I want to know. And finally, probably the least significant change mentioned in the patch notes, Two-Tailed Fox received a very small buff. It ended up being like a 1% buff on its third rocket, so overall damage 1%. And I think it got a fire rate increase, but I didn't bother really, fire rate decrease, sorry, but I didn't really bother testing. So yeah, that's Two-Tailed Fox. Okay, so that's all the changes objectively, okay? Now I'm going to talk about subjective, okay? The meta going forward, this is tough. This is really tough, because we're kind of in a situation where we spent an entire season where one option was extremely obviously the correct choice to use on literally everything. But now we're in a situation where if you go to the ranking tab right now and you look at, okay, let's ignore Ballador's for a second here, because Ballador's is a kind of a unique case where you have one person using a stasis super and, you know, everyone's getting a 15% bonus, whatever. That's kind of not realistic for most scenarios, right? So let's move down the list here. And let's go to something like Duality Slug Apex, which is something that, you know, I was telling people was great last season, or even like Izzy GL Apex, right? These are two rotations before that were doing like, you know, 4.6, 5 mil damage total, right? And now if you look at the total damage they're doing, it's now 3.9 and 3.8. And now a lot of the other rotations that I was complaining about last season that I said they don't have the total damage to compete and they don't have the DPS to compete. Well, Rockets have had their total damage scaled back a lot, and they've had their DPS scaled back a fair amount as well. So you'll notice here that you have some other rotations, for example, like like Horseman Cascade GL or Horseman BNS GL, especially Horseman BNS GL. Like, look at this. You have a rotation that is doing a similar amount of total damage, almost identical, and an almost identical amount of DPS, except for you don't need galley. You don't need galley for this rotation, right? So we live in a society. We live in a society where there are now rotations that do similar total damage to a rocket rotation, except they don't need galley. So this is it's kind of like, there's a big kind of compromise going on here if you choose to use rockets. It's really rough. I would say I did some kind of napkin math here on the side. When it comes to 6-man DPS, it's probably still worth running galley. One galley, one tractor, or one galley, one tether, having rockets. Although I think for those of you that are going into the day one, right? For those of you that are going into day one, I would say ammo is going to become a much larger issue. Ammo is going to become a huge issue, I would say. So I would actually maybe even take a look at some of the rotations here that prioritize not so much rocket damage, but implement rockets as part of a larger kind of scale, right? So for example, like Malfeasance Blade Apex, or Malfeasance Impetus Apex, or like Izanagi Sniper Apex. This is the D Shadow triple reload rotation, where this kind of slightly longer rotation with more total damage is probably going to be more appropriate for a day one scenario where you're going to burn your ammo and be out of ammo, and you're going to be sitting there with nothing, right? Because before we had a scenario where even if the phase was longer and you ran out of ammo and you were kind of just sitting there doing nothing, you were still going to do more damage than something like a linear, right? But now we're at a point where you kind of do have to figure out maybe using something like Malfeasance or Merciless or Horseman or, any number of options to extend your damage out further and focus your damage on more not rocket than rocket, okay? So it's a little bit rough. And that's where something like Pyrogale comes in handy. I think on day one, right, especially because ability damage and weapon damage scale a bit differently under contest, I would say on day one, using something like Pyrogale is going to help you extend your total damage a bit more than something like a Needle Storm or something like a Golden Gun or a T-Crash. So it might be more appropriate to do something like that. But that being said, I think Crota's End is going to have a lot of mini bosses. So I think teams that are able to really manage their ammo situation well going into the raid will be set no matter what they use. But this is something to consider though, because rotations where you're dumping rockets only and nothing but rockets are going to jeopardize your success. So damage per brick. Yeah, it's an interesting way to scale damage. So just really thinking about total damage and kind of like figuring out ammo efficiency is going to be a big thing on this day one. Because that being said, right, I mean, if you do a rotation like this, where you're using a bait and switch heavy GL, you're going to run out of ammo too, right? And you're using a ton of special ammo too. So the main thing is just, I would say, instead of, like if you have like a bunch of well warlocks, for example, right? Focus on stretching your damage across your entire loadout. So maybe using stuff like Starfire and Verities and Sunbracers, and then doing like Izzy GL Rocket, and then not, using a reload assist like Grapple, so that you spread your damage more thinly and more evenly, right? And of course, by the way, these times to empty, these are all assuming you're a mechanical god, okay? You are not, realistically speaking, right? You could have someone practice the Izzy Sniper Apex rotation that I have listed in this spreadsheet, and they are never going to hit 20 seconds. They're never going to hit 20 seconds because every single swap timing that I've used in this spreadsheet assumes that you have the max dexterity mods for that weapon's affinity. That's number one. And number two, that you are hitting frame perfect inputs. Okay? So realistically speaking, it's probably not possible for a human to actually hit these timings. You're probably going to spend maybe 1.2 times the amount that these take. Sounds just like me? Okay. Maybe Zemo can hit 20. Maybe Zemo can hit the sub 20 Izzy Sniper Apex. But yeah, it's going to be rough out there. I wish all of you the best of luck when it comes to day one. I'm definitely going to be talking with my team about this as well. But ammo management, okay? I didn't really stress this as much in my day one video because I was like, okay, well, rockets do a shit ton of damage anyway. You're going to chunk the fuck out of the boss. Even if your ammo isn't managed that well, you're still going to do great, okay? But now, rocket total is not significantly higher than other weapon setups, so you should really try your best to use your ammo efficiently, okay? And of course, rockets, I would say, rockets and GLs, if we're going to compare them just holistically, obviously rockets are more useful in terms of like ad clear. And, if you're in a pinch and you want to kill an enemy, a rocket is probably a better option than a GL. If you're killing like a swarm of enemies that's, going to kill you or something. So that's rocket changes, the meta going forward. I think going forward in three-man scenarios, like if you're not in a raid, if you're in a dungeon, in speedrunning in particular, people are going to need to start getting a lot more creative, okay? Because remember, even in three-man, if we go to the Wolfpacks tab here, right? If you have 2 people shooting galley, it's 1.63. It was 1.64 back then, okay? But now, 2 days later, it's 1.27. So I think genuinely, either if you're doing damage rotations in like a trio or like a duo, or if you're doing a solo damage, right? Like rockets are really not the play. They're really not the play. Maybe in some scenarios they're going to be the play, but I would say most of the time you're probably better off using heavy GLs, or you're probably better off using Acreus, or you're probably better off using ability-based damage. Like there's a lot of options here, but rockets in 3-man are really, really, you're going to have to learn to live without them, or somehow integrate other elements into your damage. In terms of ramifications for speedrunning, this doesn't apply to everyone watching this video, but ramifications for speedrunning. Going forward, we have quite a few things that have been affected in raids specifically. In dungeons, I'm obviously, talking about that as well, but that's kind of more universal. In raids, 3-3 Goss is very in danger right now, because Trio Sanctified without galley chunking is, I would have to assume, very challenging. So, the people that were complaining, you guys didn't have to do Trio Sanctified back when it was hard. Well, now it's fucking hard again, buddy. Now it's hard again, guys. So Trio Sanctified is going to be really rough. That one phase is going to be tight. You're probably going to have to implement more abilities. I have a feeling bipod spam is going to be your friend in that one, but, don't quote me on that. Zero Night War Priest. You guys have probably seen the Zero Night War Priest video on my channel. That's probably never fucking happening again. So, I guess I asked for this, but sucks, right? Sucks. We're probably never Zero Nighting War Priest again. Caretaker 1 floor, definitely not using rockets. Definitely not fucking using rockets. If there is a Caretaker 1 floor that still exists somehow, you're definitely not using rockets for it. That's all I'm saying for that. I think that's pretty much it. I don't think, Riven is a little bit affected in Last Wish. Golden Gun and Kinetic Search nerf is a little bit affected in Last Wish, but not too much. I don't think any other raid is really affected. Crypt, you can still 1-boop. It's not too much time loss. Solo run will be fine. Yeah, you weren't relying on Pack Hunter for that. Although I guess the Goldie nerf is a little bit annoying. But yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not much else to talk about. Malfeasance is currently bugged with Overload Hand Cannon, but I expect that to be patched. Envious Assassin is currently allowing you to get like 4 in the mag with Cold Comfort and like 8 in the mag with bipod rockets, but again, expect that to be patched, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. Good luck to all of you doing the day 1. This has been a very painful and long meta update. But yeah, good luck. It's Joever. It's Joever.